Have you ever wondered if there was some magical part of you that you've been unable or afraid to access? Have you ever felt or been told you're crazy? Here's a thought to ponder. What if you're not? What if every imaginary friend, every letter to Santa Claus, every fairy or elf you saw as a child was your inner self reaching out to the spiritual world? What if your blocks are really a bridge? What if your wounds are really your windows? What if all your anxiety and your trauma are there to elevate you to something greater than yourself? I'm here to tell you, you're not crazy, you're connected. Hear from the rock stars of the New Age world about that moment when they stepped into their power and how you can step into yours too. Here on Crazy Connected with your host, Bridget LeRoy. Welcome to this episode of Crazy Connected with your host, Bridget LeRoy. We have a really fascinating guest today. I mean, I guess I always say that because they're all fascinating. But today we have Deborah Marshall, who in particular is works with crystals, which I find to be just absolutely fascinating. She facilitates different workshops. She's an energy healer on many different levels. And has a really incredible backstory. So welcome to Crazy Connected, Deb. Really glad you're here. So tell us a little bit. Obviously, the show's called Crazy Connected, and the whole point is like, when did you realize, you weren't crazy, you were connected, and how crazy connected are you now? You have a fascinating upbringing and a story all the way back to before you were born. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I was born on Camp Lejeune in the Naval Hospital. My parents were gorgeous. They looked like movie stars. They were very young, and my dad had just joined the Marines. And I didn't know this until just a few years ago, but apparently the water down there was quite poisoned and toxic. And I was actually conceived down there. I was a love child. um, and it's actually quite a miracle that I'm alive here today. Both of my parents were poisoned by the water. I was poisoned by the water as well. When I was born with a heart murmur. And then I have a lot of cognitive things that basically revolve around my ears. I can hear, but it's the way that I process information. So I've had to live with those things. And unfortunately, live with two parents who, suffered a lot mentally from the poison that they ingested down there.
That's amazing. And I noticed that on your website, you tell a story about, being young and your younger sister cutting her foot and you feeling it, like actually feeling it. So you identify yourself as a super empath.
Yeah, I've always had that power. I've always had that ability. It's something that as I, you know, learned what it was when I was much older, learned how to manage. And crystals really helped me a lot with managing that.
Well, I'm going to get to the crystals soon, but I want to find out when you felt that. And you went, and I assume that you were a kid. You went and told your parents or told somebody or a teacher. What was the reaction? Did people say, "Oh yeah, sure, you're a super empath. Let's throw you a
No,
party"?
not at all. And I didn't even have the words as a child. Even today, I struggle with having words to match what I'm feeling. It was just inside of me, and I would let it flow out. My sister also, because she also we moved away from North Carolina before she was born, but again, she was ingested in my mother's womb during that time. So she was born with club feet, and they had to break her legs when she was a little baby. And I remember like waiting in the hospital and her with these like two little baby casts on,
Oh,
and it was a club foot actually, not a
yeah,
club leg.
yeah.
But yeah, so. But the empathy, I've had it my whole life, and it's with everything. It's with animals, people, and it helps me a lot in my practice. It helps me to connect to people and to understand people.
Well, I thought it was so interesting when you talked about your hearing, because in particular, my husband has tinnitus,
Mm-hmm.
and we were at an event. I've actually talked about it on the show before because I thought this was so fascinating. We were at an event at Omega, and he asked the people who were leading the event, "What can I do to get rid of my tinnitus?" And one of the leaders, Regan Hillier, turned around to him and said, "Why would you want to get rid of it? Have you ever considered it could be your angels trying to speak to you?" So, how did you? What is your kind of your spiritual workaround with these? Because it sounds like it actually led you to who you are today. You wouldn't be who you are today if you didn't have these
No,
things.
100%. And I've had angels around me my whole life. I've had angels protecting me my entire life. And it's just been incredible. And as I've looked back on certain things that have happened to me, there's no doubt that, God sent me here for a purpose, or I volunteered to come here to Earth at this time to help with the ascension, to help humanity evolve, and to help with the healing that needs to happen on Earth right now, but also to dissolve a lot of these programs and belief systems that I had to dissolve within myself first.
Can you give me one example?
Sure. Well, like even believing in telepathy, right?
Right.
Or even believing in empathy, or even believing in crystals. So when I first started my self healing, which was in 2004, and started consciously working with crystals to heal myself, the first thing that happened was an orb came to me. And when I was a child, I used to see orbs all the time. But then through the conditioning, they just kind of went away,
Yep.
or I didn't see them
We talk about
anymore.
that a lot on this show about the conditioning. Yeah.
Okay. So this was 2004, and I was going through my divorce, and this orb shows up. And I've done artwork around it, and I know it's my sister,
Mm.
Sarah, who unfortunately was run over in a parking lot in 1979. Um, and she just came to me, and I didn't know who it was at first. But then it became very clear, and she was my spirit guide for many years. She left a few years ago. She actually channeled through one of my best friends and said, hurry up, do what you got to do, because I got things to do. And it was difficult for me to let her go. But I got an ascended master spirit guide,
Mm.
Quinlan.
Oh,
Um,
goddess,
so
goddess of compassion.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The Dragon Master,
Mm.
actually.
Yeah.
So, and then Sarah actually did come to me just like last week, and I thought I didn't think it was her because I didn't think she could come back. I was like,
We don't know what the rules are.
no, I was like, I didn't think she could come back, and I'm like, wow, that's like it's like in the morning, like, and there she is. And I'm like, hi, are you Sarah? And then when I spoke to one of my other sisters later on, she told me what she was going through. I was like, and I told her, and she just started crying.
Aw.
And she had done something very beautiful, and that she needed to do some healing work on herself that involved forgiveness. And I was like, well, oh, okay, so it was Sarah Joy.
Aw. That was her name,
Yeah.
Sarah Joy.
Sarah Joy
Oh,
Marshall.
how sweet.
Yeah.
So listen, Deb or Deborah?
Deborah.
Okay.
Deb is fine too,
Okay.
actually.
So Deborah, tell me about your introduction to crystals and how you vibed with it. So, like, how you knew that was, I know you have many modalities, but that was like the main one.
It was. So I fell in love with crystals. Basically, I was going through, like I said, my divorce. I met this psychic, and reintroduced me to crystals because my sister Sarah is actually buried under a rose quartz.
Wow.
And yeah, rose quartz was actually the first crystal that I was consciously working with. And my grandmother had given me this beautiful jewelry box carved out of rose quartz, which
Wow.
I still have. And she gave it to me when I was 18, when I graduated from high school. So, and my sister Heidi reminds me, oh no, you were always into crystals, but when we grow up with trauma and we have fragmentations, a lot of it we forget or we let it go. So really, I started, when I say conscious, I was very conscious of the work I was doing with crystals in 2004. And my curiosity and interest in them just kept growing and growing. I had always been, before that, like an actress, and that never really panned out for me. I mean, it panned out in that I did a lot of great shows and I loved the work that I did. But I could never really make a living at it. So I was always working these other weird jobs. And I guess it was like 2014. I ran into Hibiscus Moon, but the first real intro was my own intro where I was working at this thrift shop, and you probably know it, the LVIS.
Oh, yeah. That's probably where I know you from.
Yep. And
That's in East Hampton, New York.
Yep,
Yes.
and it was in that 2000, maybe 2007, and this strange woman, I'd never seen her before in my life, walks up to me, and she's like, "Oh, let me see your hands." And I show her my hands, and she's like, "Oh, you're a healer. What are you doing here?" And I was like totally freaked out. And so then I was on my lunch break, and I was looking at the books, and there were two books by Katrina Raphael on crystal healing, and I bought them both for like $1.50 each or something. And I just dove into those books, and
it's amazing, isn't it? I don't mean to interrupt, but it's so fascinating from other guests that like they feel drawn to that thing. It's like their heart connects instantly with that particular thing, and like you know.
I knew I'm getting so I'm getting what I call a wave right now, and that's when I get the tingles in my crown, and I only get that when it's like an absolute truth. So it's like a truth vibration, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, we're going to jump around a little bit,
Oh,
but
that's fine.
you had said something about the frequency of your voice earlier,
Yes.
and I want to talk about crystal vibrations and frequency. But please, what you said was so beautiful. Can you repeat it before?
Sure. So my voice is carrying a very high vibrational frequency, and anyone who hears my voice is receiving that frequency, and it's going to help you with whatever you need. It could be healing. It could be opening up different parts. It could be clearing. Whatever you need, it's going to give you. And when you listen to this podcast, if you listen, you're going to hear what you need to hear. And people may hear different things. Not everybody's going to hear the same message.
Now, do crystals have different frequencies? Because
Yes.
I don't really understand, like I mean, I don't need a scientific like breakdown, but crystals have actual frequencies or vibrations, the different.
Yes, they carry very high vibrational frequency because they only have one dominant oscillatory rate, which is why there's a crystal in every cell phone, car ignition, computer, watch, because they're perfect, absolutely perfect. But like clear quartz, which is considered the master healer because it can vibrate any color. So they all sort of have their own special thing that they can do.
Yeah, I remember hearing about crystals. I mean, I used to not believe in any of this because I was conditioned, you see, from when I was a child, and I did have all of that. I put the lid on it, and then, of course, on top of that lid, I put alcohol, drugs, work, going into the newspaper business, which, of course, was factual. Everything was based on facts. I mean, it amazes me. That's why I want to talk to people about this stuff, because it's so incredible. And I remember Shirley MacLaine coming out with Out on a Limb, and there was something about crystals, and I was just like, she is crazy. And now I'm like, oh my God, she was so ahead of the curve on this. She was just brave enough to speak out. I mean, obviously all of this stuff has been going on for millennia, but every once in a while somebody steps forward and they kind of break it down for us into words we can understand. But do we want to understand it or not is the question. So how do you you have Earth Goddess by Deborah Marshall.com, and you do these workshops and stuff. Tell me about what the workshops are and who are the people who come to them, and like who.
So the workshops I do are mostly at the library, and it's just really to introduce people to crystals and to energy, and to open up their belief systems. But I work, the more powerful work that I do is the one-on-one sessions. when I first started my business, Earth Goddess, I worked primarily on animals. And I had no idea when I was getting my certification that that's what I would be doing. But I just really vibed with the animals. And I love working with animals because they're so much easier. And they have a different relationship to time than humans do. So what happened was my clients who saw the results in their animals were like, "Hey, can you do this for me?" And I was like, "Yes, I can."
Well, what exactly, when you say do this, so explain if you could walk me through
Absolutely,
what a
absolutely.
session is.
So the first thing is consent, right? Just like with anything, right? Consent that you agree that you want to do this, that this is something that you want to participate in because you're an active participant in the healing, in the session, the energy balancing. The next thing that I ask my clients to do is to set an intention because intentions are extremely powerful. So they don't have to, but it is something that I ask them to do if they choose to, because that will super charge, yes, your session. And then basically I might pray about it. The crystals speak to me, so it's been 20 years now working with crystals. I have a collection from all over the world. Some of my crystals are regular, like their job is just to go to work with me.
Yeah, right.
They're, and those crystals that I work with like that get more and more powerful,
So
and stronger and stronger.
Do you put them into people's
I
hands
do.
or on their
I
body?
do. So the way it starts is they will, we need a grounding stone by your feet. I like to use a lodestone or a black tourmaline. And then at the top of the head, there will be placed a clear quartz with the point headed up. So not down. I mean, sometimes the point has to come down. It depends, like once I tap in, I'll know what to do. Then there'll be a crystal in each hand, one in the left, one in the right. I like to work with double terminated, or it might be a single termination. I make a circuit. So what we do is we activate the light column. So there'll be a prayer and then a guided meditation to activate the light column, which is absolutely beautiful. And then once that's done, I use a pendulum. And I will hold my pendulum over each chakra. And as I do that, the pendulum will either be stagnant or it will start moving. If the pendulum is stagnant, that means that chakra is blocked and it needs to be cleared. So I will go ahead and clear the chakra by rotating my pendulum in a counterclockwise direction and pulling the energy out of the chakra and disposing of it, usually into a candle. If it's warmer weather, I can throw it out a window, but it has to be disposed of. It can't stay stagnant in the room. And then I'll work up through the whole chakra system, just the 7 main chakras in the bodies. Sometimes I'll work with the earth star, which is below the feet, or the soul star, which is above the head. So then we go to a 9 chakra, because there's actually more than 9 chakras, but I like to stay within that realm. And especially for people who are coming in for their first time and they've never experienced anything like this, it can be quite a bit.
So actually that something that we do with the shamanic work is that we then have to clean the crystals afterwards. Have you had, without of course giving away names or anything, any really dense energy where you were like, oh my God, I'm going to need to maybe get new crystals because of that one?
Yes, I've had crystals break. I've had my pendulum break. I've had multiple crystals break in sessions. So having that in mind, if I have a precious, some of my crystals don't leave the house, right?
Yeah.
Some of them are just personal, just for me, right? Sometimes I'm guided to share those, but yes, absolutely. Crystals will break. Crystals will actually disappear as well. They can leave.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, we think of crystals as being, rocks that don't change their form, but they're constantly evolving, aren't they?
They are. I have one. Actually, I used it in the last workshop that I just did at the John Germain Library, and it's a watermelon tourmaline. And this crystal, I've used it a lot. I used it on my dad. I used it on his kidneys. I mostly use it on heart and lungs because it's really good for the heart and lungs. But it also acts like a transistor radio, like a walkie-talkie. So it's very interesting. So you can connect either to the multiverse or a specific person.
And has that rock like
It's
changed over?
shrunk.
Oh, you're kidding.
No,
That's
it
so
shrunk.
cool.
And I had, like I said, I'd used it on my dad over the years. He's like, "Is that the same crystal? It's like it shrunk, you know." So they do change. And also the other thing that can happen to them is they can get rainbows, or they'll get like different designs
Like
inside of
occlusion, like the
them.
occlusions.
Yes, yeah, very much
That's amazing.
so.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I love crystals. I don't really know very much about them, but when I'm drawn to one, then I know that that's kind of my connection. So it's wonderful. So when you work with different people, do you work to try to raise their frequency to the frequency of the crystal, or how does it work exactly?
Well, it really depends on what their intention is and what they want to work on, right?
Right, that's right. You
But
said
but
they
the first thing is just coming into balance, right? Because
right.
so many people have imbalances from all the toxicity in our world, the televisions, the food, the water, the air. I mean, you can't get around it. So it's very important to pay attention to your energy and what you're putting into your body, the people you're surrounding yourself with, the music, everything.
Yeah, everything you ingest.
Everything. So the first thing is just like clearing, right? Getting them back to balance. And then once that happens, I can help them with other intentions. I can tell you one of my clients who's no longer here, who I worked with for a short time, a few months. And I didn't know that I was doing this at the time. And she would always bring these beautiful intentions with her. Tragically died in an airplane accident. And after I was quite upset when it happened because I had a session booked with her the next day.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it, but I was preparing her. I was basically being a death doula and preparing her for the next step on her journey. So
Wow.
I never really sometimes I don't really know, right? But I'm
Right.
following my guidance. I'm following God. I'm listening to the crystals. I'm listening to their energy, and I'm just doing.
So the name of this program is Crazy Connected. Is there a moment, I mean, along this journey that you've described, where you realized you weren't crazy, you were connected to something greater than you?
Um, you know, I don't know if there was one single moment because there's been so many moments. Um, I will tell you one time, I was down at the beach. It was in 1979. It was after my sister had died, and I had come to live with my mother for the first time in about 5 years. And we were down at the beach, down at Scott Cameron, and the lifeguards had gone. It was after 5 o'clock. I was 16 years old, and my mom decided to go in for a swim. The ocean was quite rough. She didn't look at it, and she went in, and my mom started to drown.
Oh my gosh.
And I was standing on the beach alone with my stepdad, who's, he's a small man, and I'm probably a stronger swimmer than he is, but I knew I couldn't save my mom, so I'm like pacing up, and it's because like I was worried about myself. I mean, I was
Yeah.
worried about my mom, but I'm like, oh my God, now what?
Right.
Like my whole life is just crumbled, and now I'm gonna watch you drown. So I like hit my knees and started praying. And out of the dunes, two gigantic men, ex-lifeguards, came
Yeah.
and pulled my mother out of the water, and they disappeared as quickly as they came.
Wow.
And I knew then that angels exist and God is real and prayer works. And I was born in the church. So I was born LDS. I'm a Mormon. I was a Mormon. And so when I was a young child, I learned to pray in a very freestyle way, just like, Heavenly Father. Like we just like that was just like part of my upbringing. And I really believe that protected me for a lot of my life.
I'm just curious because I don't really know very much about LDS. I mean, how does the church look upon like working with crystals and stuff?
You know, I've worked with members of the church actually, and it's quite interesting. And this particular member was a teacher, not just a teacher. Holds the priesthood, and he's a temple worker. And he came to me because he was having an issue with his hand. And in that session, there was a demon.
An entity.
No.
Definitely a demon.
Yeah, this was a demon. It wasn't in him. It was attached to his aura.
Right.
And I had to stop the session. He didn't really know what I was doing. I just stopped what I was doing. I put the demon in what's called stasis, which is this enclosure.
Right.
It's like putting them in this circle of light where they can't move. And then I interviewed the demon to find out why he was there. And then I called in Azrael and I destroyed him.
Huh.
So when the session was over, I said to my client, I said, I have to tell you something that happened. And I told him what happened in the interview. And he told me a story that confirmed everything that I just told you, that it was real.
Wow.
And he said, thank you. And actually, one of his testimonials is one of the testimonials on my website.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about, because we're wrapping up. We have a few minutes left.
Okay. Oh
I know
my
it goes
gosh,
quick.
that's so fast.
I know. It always goes so fast. But let's, people want to get in touch with you, to talk to you. Tell me a little bit about your website and what you offer.
Yeah, so I offer energy balancing, crystal healing, crystal journeys. I create elixirs. I do home clearings, animal healing as well. And then I can also come and create events for you. Like if you were having some girls over and you wanted to do like some crystal stuff, we could make mojo bags.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we could do lots of fun stuff. We could co-create an event around a moon cycle, a full moon, a new moon, so you could contact me at earthgoddess by deborahmarshall.com.
Okay.
Or you could just Google me, Deborah Marshall Crystals or Earth Goddess Crystals, Sag Harbor.
I was going to say you're in Sag Harbor and East Hampton, but you also do stuff online. So if people are not lucky enough to be in this particular area, they can contact you.
Absolutely. And I read tarot and oracle cards too. I got my first deck from Amy and Monty Zerner back in the 90s.
We've had them on the show, my favorites.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not my favorites. I love you all, but I've known Amy and Monty since I was 6. So they get a free pass for everything. Deborah Marshall, thank you so very much for coming on Crazy Connected. We could have talked for hours. You have a fascinating story. If you want to be in touch with Deborah, Earth Goddess by deborahmarshall.com. Thank you. And thank you for coming in and sharing the beautiful frequency of your voice to heal us all.
You're welcome. Thank you.